the attendee list is loaded in. We did have quite an extensive RSVP list for this afternoon's town hall. So bear with us for a moment as the attendees are loaded in. But welcome to everyone who's joined us on this Friday afternoon to talk about careers and jobs and all the rest for our wonderful grad students and postdocs on campus. So just give us another couple of minutes and we'll load folks in. I still see the numbers climbing. If you have the closed captioning enabled and you would like to turn it off, you can use hide subtitles and you should be able to turn it off. We do have it turned on by default. So again, welcome everyone. Just give us another moment as we're sort of loading in all of our attendees for this town hall, and then we will get started. All right, so the attendee list seems to be stabilizing a bit, so we will go ahead and get started. I want to thank everyone again. I'm Jillian Hayes. I'm the Dean of Grad Division here at UCI, and welcome to our first of our many monthly town halls of 2021. One of our staff members told me earlier today he'd like to return his 7-day trial on 2021. So hopefully you all, this will be our highlight of the week for many of you, but we have assembled a great panel for you today to talk about career pathways, how you might find a job, what you can be doing to be thinking about a job, particularly in this tough pandemic world we're living in, and where things might be going in terms of careers for our grad students and our postdocs here at UCI, and in fact around the world. So before I introduce the panel, I just want to say a couple of things, which is, the number one thing I would tell you is follow the path that is right for you. And it may or may not be the path that's right for the person who's sitting next to you, or I guess virtually in the Zoom square next to you. And that has certainly been the case for my career. I've had a long, weird, twisty, turny career doing lots of different things. And that's what's made me happy. And it's not always been conventional. And then the other thing I want to just say is, we know things are tough out there. They're not quite as bad as we thought they might be, actually. But regardless, we in Grad Division and other parts of campus and all of the wonderful partners you have on this panel today are continuing to mobilize. And so please be on the lookout throughout winter and spring quarter for additional resources and supports that we are working on behind the scenes that we may or may not have ready to share with you yet today. So with that, I'm going to just introduce the panel, sort of going through them as they sit on my screen. And they're each going to give you a few minutes of their own advice and maybe some services that we have here on campus. And I encourage you to go ahead and drop any questions that you might have into the Q&A. If you're on the Zoom, if you're on the Facebook stream, I'm sorry, we can't take questions from you easily, but if you're on the Zoom, please drop them into the Q&A. And please don't be shy. If you have a question, it is almost certainly the case that someone else on this call has the same question. So you are doing them a great service by being the one to go ahead and type it into the Q&A. So with that, I'm going to hand it over first to my new Associate Dean for Student Success, Jamie Smith, to introduce herself and give you some of her own thoughts.
Hi, it's so nice to be here. So I've been with UCI since 2007 in the drama department, teaching lighting design. And before that, I was a freelance designer, and I've had a lot of different jobs in my life, and have had to over the last 13 years, I've had to negotiate both a professional design career as well as a full-time academic career. And I'd say that my first piece of advice right now is that I know that this is a scary time, but I want you all to recognize that every single one of you has the ability to do excellent research, analyze high volumes of information, to draw new insights and ideas, the ability to write and to make cogent arguments. And all of these skills are in high demand across a wide range of disciplines. And so I encourage you to throw the net broadly and widely, right? To separate out what you think are the specific skill sets for your discipline, and to instead look at them as skill sets that can apply to a wide range of industries. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. And I will now hand it over to Goran, who, like Madonna and Beyonce, only requires one name because everyone knows this wonderful man. And he runs the CEO Roundtable amongst many other things. So Goran, if you could give him a few insights as well.
Sure. So first of all, I work here on industry engagement, but I'm also an alum of UCI engineering. I got my PhD in the early 90s, which was time of another economic crisis. After completing my PhD, I actually stayed at UCI for a couple of years because I was looking for that industry job. Interestingly enough, the company that hired me found me through a research paper that I had that matched their interest. Keep in mind, this is before World Wide Web, before email as we know it today, before various online resources. So my advice to you, first of all, make use of those online resources that exist today. So first of all, you should make sure you have a LinkedIn profile that is up to date with all your projects, accomplishments, skills, that you're connecting with your fellow graduate students, with your professors on LinkedIn. And then you should also be aware that LinkedIn allows you to see alumni of UCI as well as any undergraduate institution that you might have finished, and that you can view those alums and connect with them and reach out to them. And you can search them to see specific companies, specific universities where they work and where you may wish to work. So I will put in a chat a couple of resources, a presentation I did for UCI alumni on LinkedIn tips searching, as well as a video demonstration on how to do that. And by the way, if you do reach out to alums, you don't necessarily need to know them. A lot of alums will, accept your invite, but do so with a note. Don't just blindly reach out. Say to them, hey, I see you're a fellow UCI alum. I see you work at this company. And then reach out with a request like, would you have time for a 10, 15-minute call? Or, in the past, I would have said, do you have time for a 10, 15-minute meeting? Well, these days it's a Zoom call and everybody's used to Zoom calls, so it's easy. And by the way, when you do that Zoom call, make sure you have a nice UCI background like the one that I have here, courtesy of UCI Athletics. So, they will be impressed by that you're reaching out, and you should reach out early, not when you're needing the job or, you're a month away from graduating, but well before then. And there are 170,000 UCI alums on LinkedIn. Some of them are students and some of them did not finish their degrees. But by the way, all of them are considered alums. If you're 1/4 at UCI, so all of you are pretty much for sure alum, because I'm sure all of you have been at UCI at least 1/4. 18,500 have the MS or Master of Science in their profiles, and 8,700 have PhD in their profiles. Again, I will send you links so you can search those. And again, highly recommend reaching out now, not when you're graduating. But that's not all. There is another great resource, and this was put together by the Alumni Association. It's the Anteater Network. It was launched 2 years ago. It has over 7,000 students and alumni on the platform. And these are alums who have self-identified as being interested and willing to connect and mentor students. So these are alums that already say, hey, I'm willing to mentor a student. So you should be reaching out to them. You should, again, ask them for a meeting, suggest a time, suggest a topic. And then, again, you're looking for that connection that at some point in the future can lead to a job referral and so on. And lastly, don't forget your own lab mates, your alumni of your programs. So if you're not sure who they are, they're sometimes and are often listed on your professor's website or your school website. Reach out to them, find out where they are. If you're on an academic kind of route, make sure you connect with them because they might know what postdoc positions are opening, or if they, for example, who are maybe professors at another institution, have just applied for funding and will have a postdoc position available come fall or whatever. So you want to have those connections with them. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Goran. And we do already have a question in the chat asking for the link to the Anteater Handshake Network, which I know you're going to put in so that, oh, and there we go. There's a bunch of links already in the chat for everyone. So please grab those and enjoy them. And we will put put all of those links in our weekly message going out to the students in a couple hours as well. So even if you're not on this call or if you're watching it later, you can go to the email that went out today and get that information. I will just add to that the point about LinkedIn, often I think academics don't think of LinkedIn as a thing that we need to do. And so for you PhD students and postdocs out there, this might be a little bit unfamiliar to you, but increasingly I am finding LinkedIn really is a space for academics. And I'm actually have found great papers from junior faculty and students who announce them on LinkedIn. So it can be used for a whole variety of things. So with that, I will pass it over to one of our esteemed academics, another faculty member on this panel, Professor Beth Banettes from Over in Education.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to have such a big group here on a Friday afternoon. Thanks for joining. So I've been here at UCI for about 15 years. Jamie, I think I came the year before you, and I'm always struck when I sit on these panels, the people I get to meet. So I arrived in 2006. I'm in the School of Education, and I want to talk a little bit about a few different things. So I want to talk about careers in academia, first of all. So as Jillian mentioned when we first started the call, there are more opportunities out there than we anticipated. I remember having a conversation with Jillian last spring thinking this was going to be a tough season. And I know we have several students in our school who have interviews there, that there are job opportunities out there. So that is encouraging. I also think it's encouraging because as things start to hopefully normalize to some extent in the next few months ahead, that means next year is also going to be a time that we can look forward to. But I also think it's important to think about there might be some pauses along the way. You might need to take a different kind of pathway, and that's okay. So I have some colleagues who, a colleague of ours who was a student at Stanford, she got a position, she was a director of an education program at UCLA. And while she was directing that program, she continued to publish, continued to engage in research. We hired her as an assistant professor. Unfortunately for UCI, we've lost her. She went to Vanderbilt for a few years and then was rehired into the UC system and is now at Berkeley. I say that because that director position might have been seen as something not as serious of an academic, but she continued to engage in her research. And the point I want to emphasize there is keep an eye on the work you want to do. You might be in a position that is a little bit different from what you think initially, but if you keep an eye on the work you want to do and keep centering that work, you can still be building your CV so that it's visible that you are a scholar and that's the work that you want to be doing. But I also want to say that careers outside of academia are wonderful and valuable. And as a land-grant institution, as a University of California public school, we do want to see our graduates serving our community and serving our state, serving our country, by taking your knowledge and putting it to good use in the world. So in the School of Education, in social sciences, and frankly, every area, you could find yourself engaging in work with nonprofit organizations, with state level organizations. You might find yourself working at a university in a director position of some sort at UCI or at other universities. So sometimes those are soft money positions, but sometimes because we're land grant institutions, we have commitments to the states. So those positions are built into our infrastructure. They might not be as visible to you because you're sort of surrounded by this academic culture, but they are positions that are in the world. Of course, there are positions in industry, several of, it's interesting as education students, our students don't think about themselves as going to places like Deloitte and Touche or Ernst & Young, but they study learning and they study organizational development. So there are positions that are in lucrative money-making kinds of endeavors that we don't often think about in a traditional academic environment. And I also want to make a plug for working in community colleges. I think there's sort of a narrative that is, if I get a job in a community college, either it's not as, it's not as appealing, for example, as going to an R1 institution. But I have had several colleagues who have left academia, left the R1 institution environment to go to a community college. And because of some of their training and their research training background, they've then taken on leadership positions, moving into administrative positions in those institutions. And I think we can recognize the important role the community college system has plays in California, and will continue to play across our country with the cost of higher education and so on. So you can really see yourself as an agent, an advocate in those positions. And lastly, because I'm in the School of Education and teaching and learning is so central to my heart, I do want to also emphasize that some of you might find yourself actually taking on a career in teaching. And we have some students who are history and English major, PhD students. We have some people in the sciences. And there are many positions, many K-12 settings, who would love to have a highly educated, someone with very rich content knowledge. Jillian and I have talked about this informally, and maybe what we can do after this call is send out a survey to our graduate students to try to get a sense how many of you might be interested in exploring a career in K-12 teaching. Our MAT program here at UCI begins in the summer. Some of you might not have summer commitments where you could take a class or two in our MAT program and just get a sense of like, what is this all about? What do K-12 teachers, what's their work about? We also have private schools, public schools in the community who contact us wanting some of our PhD students to go teach there. So this becomes sort of a pathway to make that happen. And then I'll put a plug for myself. I will be teaching a PhD seminar next winter on teacher thinking and learning, teacher development, and would love some people from other parts of campus who might be interested in the work of teaching. Come take that class and you can explore that as a possibility. And lastly, I just want to go off of what Goran was saying. And this is something it took me a while to learn, which is to begin to build a network early in your career. So you can start looking around and thinking about, well, what kind of work do I think I might want to do? And start reaching out to people who do that work and ask them for 15 to 20-minute conversations. Ask them if you can sort of interview them. Ask them if you might be able to shadow them sometime in the future. You want to sort of see what are other kinds of, get outside of the curtain of academia, look beyond and think about what are some other things that are out there. Academic life, R1 institution life, that is for some, maybe not for all. So building a network, being entrepreneurial around your profession and thinking about who's doing the work that I want to do and ask for a conversation. I want to tell you that if someone had told me that in my 20-something, early 30-something self, I might have been quite intimidated to do that. About 5-8 years ago, I did embark on that and talked with different people, just sent blind emails. I was struck by how friendly and warm people were, how much they wanted to talk to me about their work. And it was wonderful. And I learned that staying at UCI is exactly where I wanted to be. So it's a thing. It was insightful for me to go on that journey. So I hope that is some useful information for all of you.
Thank you so much, Beth. And I'll throw a little number in on top of what Beth was saying, which is nationwide, we have somewhere on the order of 1,500 PhD grant or universities, rather, sorry, and only 62 of them are a part of what we call the AAU, which is places like UCI, heavy research universities. So if the only university you've ever been at is a place like UCI, you're missing almost all of what things look like. So just want to encourage you to think about those spaces and know that only 1 in 5 people in PhD programs, no matter what program it is. So whether you're at Harvard or anywhere else, only about 1 in 5 wind up at places like this. All the other folks are going to a variety of other places. And so we really encourage you to think about those and don't think of them as alternative, but find the path that really works for you. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to someone who has had an interesting and exciting path post her PhD. So Kaylee Anderson, who many of you know from her work running many of our support services in grad division.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. So as Jillian mentioned, I work with postdocs and with PhD and other graduate students, and I do professional development. So a lot of what I do is through programming. We have an upcoming panel focused on faculty search committees. If you're interested in learning about how faculty search committees function, or if you have any questions for them. I also work on a lot of our certificate programs, including preparing for a faculty career and the Mentoring Excellence program, as well as our new certificate, Management Beyond the Classroom. I also partner a lot with others on campus. I want to have a quick plug for GPS STEM. That offers a lot of professional development, a lot of networking, particularly type of support for STEM students. And I also know that if you have a STEM need and you're outside of STEM, they tend to be very open to having you into their program. So if you're not in STEM, like maybe you're in social science, but you're interested in data science, GPS STEM is a really good option for you. I also just want to have a quick plug for the Division of Teaching Excellence and Innovation, where there's a lot of professional development opportunities that relates to teaching specifically. Additionally, I also do one-on-one consultations. You'll often see me in terms of fellowships. Many of you may have come in and done fellowship advising with me. I also do some professional development advising, particularly for postdocs. I share that with Lyon, who will be hearing from here pretty soon. And I would say between the two of us, like if you get an opportunity to talk to Lauren and you get an opportunity to talk to me, it just means that you have kind of two perspectives on your documents. So it can be very helpful. So a couple of just pieces of advice that I'd like to share with you. First of all, I want to encourage you to think about finding as many mentors as possible. You never know what the job that you want is going to be and who's going to be helpful in getting that job for you. I actually got this job. I don't think I had my advisor as one of my recommenders. And I joke about that being like, you know, some kind of problem with my advisor relationship. That's not actually true. It's just because I had other people who had experience working with me in more relevant spaces. So if you have a lot of experiences, make sure that you are tending to those relationships and, you know, maintaining that network. And when you're in graduate school, you know, there's so many things that you can do besides research and teaching. And when you do that, you're going to interact with a lot of different people, and all of those people could be very helpful when you're looking for a career, especially outside of academia. I also encourage you to network with other students. I am amazed at how many of the graduate students that I went to graduate school are in just really cool jobs now. So it's really cool to see people grow. But right now, I also can recommend to the students that I work with, I can have them talk to some people that I knew personally going to graduate school who have navigated the job market successfully already. And then the last thing that I have to say is I think that a lot of times students get intimidated to come in to speak with me or anyone else in their office hours because they don't have a specific question. I know that this was an issue that I had in grad school, and I want you to encourage me, or to encourage you to come to me even if you don't necessarily have a question. Sometimes you haven't fully formulated what you need next. Sometimes you just need to talk it out, and that's completely appropriate. Sometimes people will come in and they'll just be like, you know, I'm not feeling academia. I'm not sure what to do next. What can we talk about? And I won't have an answer for you, but we can have a discussion, and I can pull in some resources and hopefully point you in some directions where you can make some informed decisions. So that is all I have for you for now. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out and ask. And again, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Kaylee. And I just want to echo, you don't have to have questions to come to office hours. So she does regular office hours. Lauren, who you're going to hear from in just a moment, does them. I do them. Jamie does them. I think most of the people on this call are available at some point or another, however you want or need. And you can always just come by to chat. And I've honestly had students just show up to my office hours because they want to talk about jobs in user experience and they want me to look at their resume. That's fine. That happens to be my professional field. I'm happy to talk to you about those things. Don't feel shy coming to any of us for any of these things. So with that plug, I will turn it over to Lyon from Career Pathways. You changed your name, so I get confused.
Yep, Division of Career Pathways, you got it. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm truly honored to be here to engage with you on this really important topic. As mentioned, my name is Lyon. I'm the career counselor for graduate students at the Division of Career Pathways, which means I have the awesome pleasure of working with all master's and PhD students across all the schools and department on campus, and those for academic and non-academic careers. So I get to see a lot of different things in relation to just career and professional development. My main role is really to provide one-on-one career advising services through appointments, through office hours, as well as doing career development workshops, just generally or by request from departments, classes, student organizations. So if we have student groups on the call, you can feel free to reach out and I can do professional development workshops for your groups. My office has been really fortunate in that we've been able to transition all of our services virtually. And so we are doing the appointments, the workshops, but also virtual career fairs. And actually this winter, we have a career fair that's dedicated for master and PhD students. And so hopefully you'll see more information about that to come in the next couple weeks. That's going to be in March. But ever since we really went virtual, there definitely has been an uptick in appointment requests. And with that, some increase in anxiety related to the job market. Even before this, right, career was often a top concern for graduate students, especially the academic job market. And given the climate, it's no surprise, right, that we all have a little extra anxiety. But I do get to meet with graduate students every day, and I work with our great employer relations teams and companies and are hiring, right? And they're hiring, they plan to continue hiring. Our association, National Association of Colleges and Employers, do continual research and they continue to come saying that they're going to continue hiring students. It's just going to look a little bit different. And our graduate students are fantastic researchers, right? And so basically we want you to take that research skill and just apply it in a different way, to do some research on industry trends. You know, Goran, you mentioned reaching out to alumni, utilizing LinkedIn, Anteater Network. No better way to find out what's going on in potential areas of interest for you than reaching out and doing those informational interviews. Really by connecting with people who are already in that field, they can let you know what's going on internally as well, as far as just within their own company, and where they're standing as far as recruitment. But really the best advice we have is currently it is an employer's market. It's not necessarily a job seeker's market. And so when we have those times, you really just want to be extremely intentional and intensive in your networking, right? So be cognizant of who you're reaching out to and why. Have a purpose, have a goal, be concise when you're reaching out to them and say, this is exactly why I want to connect with you, and have that goal, because they are getting, an influx of questions and people reaching out to them as well. But I can probably go on and on. I echo a lot of what my fellow panelists said earlier, but I just want to say, lead with positivity. There are jobs. You all have incredible transferable skills and experiences, and often it's just a matter of making sure that you're presenting those skills in the right way. And that's what I do, that's what my team does. A lot of my panelists do is help you kind of just reframe and rethink how to present those experiences, especially in a non-academic setting, right? So feel free to reach out to myself or to our office. I will also put in the chat just some 2021 winter workshops that are coming up. But I'm looking forward to answering some questions that come in. I know there is one that we have currently in the Q&A about state civil service exams and resources about those. As far as DCP in my office, I don't think we have any resources per se on state civil service exams, but we definitely have contacts with recruiters at the state level. And we often do events with those recruiters. And what we hear from them is the best way to prep for those. Typically, they're pretty general. And their advice is to grab a GRE book, dust off the GRE book, read through that. And that's the best way to really prep for those, because what it does, and I won't go into too much detail, but you take that exam and it gives you a score and it places you on a list. And if you place number 1 on that list, then you'll be the first one contacted for a potential interview. And so you do really want to do well and prep for those exams. But if you have questions on that, please feel free to reach out and I can go in more depth with that.
Great, thank you, Lauren. And last but not least, we'll hand it over to Matthew Hanson, who has a job very near and dear to my heart. And all I will say to introduce this topic is, even if you think you're not an entrepreneurship, and even if you are deeply an entrepreneur, and even if you are deeply, deeply risk averse, as I am, you can do entrepreneurial things. And so don't let any of those things stop you or scare you. And with that, we'll let Matthew introduce Applied Innovation and his role over there.
Thank you, Jillian. Again, I'm Matthew Hanson. I'm the Director of New Ventures here at Beal Applied Innovation. And like my fellow panelists, let me give you just a little bit of background on my career path, because maybe there's something that resonates with you. I started out life wanting to be a rock star. My dad said no. So then I went into engineering, went into the Air Force. I retired as a lieutenant colonel. Along the way, I picked up my doctorate in aerospace engineering, went into that field for about a little over a decade, but then launched a medical technology company out of the aerospace giant Northrop Grumman Corporation. So I went over to the med tech field. That entrepreneur experience led me into academia, where I started teaching at Chapman University about 8 years ago or so. And then I moved over here to Beal Applied Innovation to take advantage of all the opportunities here and encourage you to do the same. So Beal Applied Innovation is a business unit of UCI. Our director, Richard Sudek, reports to the provost just like Jillian does, but we're not a school. We teach no classes and we have no faculty. But what we do is we have programs and services that will help students, faculty, staff, and alumni get your ideas, your creativity into the marketplace. We do this by building relationships with industry and investors, by securing industry-sponsored research, by helping to patent and license UCI intellectual property. We provide small grants to help you get your ideas off the ground, and we can train you on becoming an entrepreneur and starting your own company. And it's definitely a career path, because in the United States, we launch 6 million new companies every year. So a lot of people do this and they do it very well. And as a little closer to home, if you go back about 20 years and look at all the companies that have been started by UCI alum, those have attracted somewhere around $26, $27 billion in investments and acquisition costs, as well as adding great products and services and, of course, jobs into the economy. As we speak, we're nurturing 60 startup companies in our Wayfinder incubator. Those companies have been founded by UCI students, faculty, staff, and alumni. And Jillian's opening comments were related to this, because Jillian took this path for part of her career as an entrepreneur. So this career path is for anyone in any field at any age. You might open your own consulting firm, your own law firm, your own film production company, your own dance studio or dental practice or counseling practice or e-commerce site, or fill in the blank, right? If you can see a problem, develop a solution, build a small team, attract some funding, manage risks, accept failure as learning, not as failure, believe in yourself, you have what we call the entrepreneur mindset. And a matter of fact, some of you have commented on the panel already about the students who are in the research fields. But researchers are entrepreneurs, right? You find a problem, you try new solutions, you attract funding, you build a team, you get a product or a solution or an idea out into the marketplace. So it's not that big of a step from where you are today to being an entrepreneur and building your own company. And we're here to help you do that. Now, it might not appear that I have a UCI background like Goran does, but not many places have a tiki bar. So Beal Applied Innovation has a tiki bar. The whole vibe over at Beal Applied, and I'm hoping you can come join us post-COVID, is a whole surf culture, because what we're trying to do is resonate with Southern California, but with the fact that we're a safe harbor where you can risk something and fail and get up again and do it again and again and again and get those ideas out in the marketplace. So to promote that, we all wear Hawaiian shirts or Tahiti shirts, whatever we can. We have a tiki bar. We have our conference centers called the beach. We have sand pits and beach balls and all kinds of stuff. So it's very creative space. And in order to help document some of what I told you, I have asked Latoya and Derek to drop a slide deck into the chat column. And that'll give you not just more information on Beal Applied Innovation, but my contact information as well. So thanks for joining us today, and best of success.
Thank you so much. What a fantastic overview from so many of our panelists. We are about halfway through the webinar, which is perfect timing. So I again want to encourage all of you to drop your questions into the Q&A even if you think you know the answer already, but you think this would be useful for other people to hear, drop those questions in the Q&A and we will work to address them. I'm going to start with one that did get dropped in a little bit earlier, which was really helpful, which is asking about the president's and postdoc, the president's and chancellor's postdoc fellowship program. So I'm dropping the link into the chat right now for the Zoom. It's quite easy though, if you're watching this on the stream later, University of California Presidential Postdoc Fellowship, just search it out. It'll be the top link that comes up. This is a wonderful program. It is UC system-wide and is really focused on diversifying the professoriate, where diversity means a variety of things. So we are looking at issues of racial and ethnic diversity, people with disabilities, LGBTQIA, people with a whole variety of backgrounds that are interesting and will bring something new and different, first-gen students, you name it, to the UC system. And that's really the goal, is to make sure that we have a really inclusive system that hears from a lot of voices. This application is due in the fall typically, and I want to encourage those of you that want to think about applying for this program to start thinking maybe in the spring or summer about who you might like to work with, going ahead and reaching out to them. These are available at any of the UC campuses, and Kaylee can speak to what we do in terms of helping you prep for those as well in a moment. But I'll just add a couple of things. UCI leads the system in conversions, what would mean someone who comes here as a postdoc who we then eventually hire. And we are really, really proud of this because it means that we're bringing in these top wonderful, inclusive and diverse voices. It also means we're getting them on the cheap. So it's also a good financial incentive. And what do I mean by that? If you look on the website, there's these wonderful incentives there where these FTE come with 5 years of funding from the Office of the President, with help with their startup packages and so on. So it's a really good deal for the campuses, which makes it a really good deal for you, because even in a year like this, where there may be reductions in hiring, and we do see somewhere on the order of 20 to 40%, depending on the discipline, reductions in faculty hiring across the UC system this year, but there are special FTE allocations just for these postdocs, and they are not affected by that kind of thing. So in 2007, when the world last sort of really struggled, all of those postdocs were able to find placements that they were really happy with. And so it's a really wonderful program. And I do certainly encourage you all to check it out. And I'll hand it over to Kaylee to talk a little bit more about what resources we have available to support you. And again, encourage you to put those questions in the chat.
Hi, everyone. So for the President's Postdoctoral Fellowship specifically, the Office of Inclusive Excellence always holds a information session. I know that they tend to do that in the fall, and I was hoping to work with them to hold one a bit earlier because, as Jillian mentioned, if you're interested in applying for this, you really should be planning early. Also, if you're not on the job market this fall, but you know that you'd like to apply for this the following year, it's also an excellent time to think about who you would like to have as your mentor. In addition, this is the kind of thing that I would do one-on-one fellowship advising on. So if you have materials that you would like some feedback on, that's something that I can provide. Additionally, Graduate Division does have our writing consultants. We have some writing groups that are in session. And as I find out about more applicants for different types of fellowships, I'm very open to helping to form writing groups. So this year, if we find a good cohort of people who are applying to this particular fellowship, I could definitely help to provide the structure to get some writing groups on board. Ultimately, I would say though, make sure that you're working very closely with people within your field. I do get a lot of field specific questions, and I'm a little bit limited with that. So make sure that you're still consulting with your advisor, your mentor. But there's a lot that even other students can do to help you in terms of giving you good feedback on those documents.
Thank you so much, Kaylee. I don't know if any of the faculty want to add on any interactions you may have had with any of our presidential postdocs. The ones that I've had the pleasure of interacting with have just been some of the most brilliant scholars, and we've been able to convert some of them into faculty here and continue to be great colleagues. So they are also around. We do have a list of those faculty who are here who went through this program and may also be able to provide you some good advice. But I'll just pause for a moment, see if any of our other panelists want to add anything. All right, we look good. So we did have some questions come in ahead of time, and I'm also seeing another one in the chat. So we'll get to those. One question that I'm a little bit worried I don't have the right panelists on, but we're going to give it a try anyway, is do we have any resource recommendations on things around IP, copyrights for book and manuscript publishing, webinars and podcasts? I have noticed that many of our grad students and postdocs are starting to do some of that kind of work quite early and during their careers with us here. I know Applied Innovation has some of these resources, so I'm hoping Matthew can speak to that a little bit.
Sure. We have staff that can help you with understanding the IP process, both patenting as well as copyright and trademark. Typically, those are applied to UCI generated ideas, right? So inventions and discoveries and things like that. So if that's not a perfect fit for you, we also collaborate with the law school, who has a person who helps support all of our startup companies on those very questions. So anything to do with patenting, licensing, trademarks, copyrights, you can contact me and we put you in touch with the right people.
Great, thank you so much. And we've got a question in the chat that I think a lot of us might be able to comment on, and I'll just call on a few of you, but anyone else who wants to jump in, please do, which is a broad and I think exciting and interesting question to ponder. What factors do you consider when planning for the next steps? So what should our students be thinking about and our postdocs be thinking about right now? And Jamie looks like she's off mute, so I'm going to her first.
One of the biggest things to think about is, what are your personal priorities? Right? Every job is going to have a different mixture of what it gives you. For instance, an R1 university has a lot of pros to it, but it is also in some ways like having 2 full-time jobs between your research and teaching. And so are your priorities continuing your research, or is it being able to have time with your kids and family? And each of the decisions you make are going to lead you in a different path for that. And so really consider that, like look at kind of the 10-year plan as to where you want to end up as you consider your next steps.
Jillian, do you mind if I jump in and go on to that too? I mean, I think I think Jamie's really right, like sort of thinking both about the kind of life that you want and where you want to be. One of the things you have to think about if you're pursuing an R1 position may mean that you're going to have to move across the country. And, you know, I had to leave my family very far, and that's been really hard. When I had children and wished that wished grandparents would have been around, who could have helped. So that doesn't mean though that you can't find other ways to get the kind of support that you need. And I wish I had understood how to be creative around those kinds of things when my kids were younger, when they went through different phases. And I say that because this goes back to this idea of thinking about your mentor network. I think we can't sort of emphasize enough the importance of building a network of peers and thinking about that network evolving and changing over time. I'm a huge advocate for the Faculty Success Program, the National Center for Faculty Development and Diversity. UCI is an institutional member. If you go to facultydiversity.org, you can type in your UCI email address and you've got membership to the resources of that organization. And they sort of help you think through a lot of these complicated issues. And I just want to go back to the postdoc comment. And Jillian and I were talking about this the other day, that you can be a postdoc in many different kinds of positions for an extensive period of time. And that doesn't mean that you will not be marketable to get a faculty position. And that notion of sort of keeping your eye on the work that you want to do. If, for example, you want an R1 position, the work that you want to do is continue to do research. So then if you have 3 different postdocs over a 9 or 10-year period, but you can continue to be productive as a scholar, you're still building that CV. So keep in mind that their judgments are not made about like how long someone is in certain positions. It's sort of like, what's the work you really want to be doing? And there are lots of different kinds of postdocs that you can do too. So there are some that are sort of where you're much more autonomous and you're carving out the work that you want to do. And there are others that faculty get grants and they need to hire someone to be sort of a lead. But think carefully about negotiating in those positions so that you can still have time, maybe one day a week or some portion of that time is allocated to you developing your own professional career.
If I could jump in too, it's never too early to have a backup plan, or two or three. I'm a anteater parent as well, and I've always suggested to my kids that they always create more and more opportunities for themselves. They don't have to use them all, but if you have a couple of backup plans in your back pocket, you have options. And that's one of the best things you can have to get through times even like this, right? Is a backup plan, an option that can take you in another direction. This might require you to sit down and do some serious assessment of the broad array of skills you have. Right now, you might be thinking of your skill set too narrowly, but it's actually quite broad and quite applicable and quite transferable to a lot of other areas. So keep developing new options. And just like your network, though, the more options you grow over time, the more freedom and flexibility you'll have.
And I would like to continue actually on that is when I mentioned earlier that the company that hired me or found me actually was through a research paper, but I will also say that I was pigeonholed with the topic of my dissertation. So finding that job actually took a while. So one way to combat that, if you want to make yourself broadly available, is to think of your dissertation topic as a project that you did for a certain period of time. It's sort of like having a job on your resume, but you have other broader skills that you can emphasize and therefore market yourself in that way. And in my case, by the way, I wasn't interested in an academic job because I had met my now wife through UCI sailing, and she works locally here. I wasn't leaving the area, so my goal was always to find a job in the geographic vicinity, and later worked in Carlsbad and worked in Long Beach, but it was always near here, right? So, and by the way, that second job in Long Beach ultimately led me back to UCI. So those were all connections via UCI. Staying connected with your professors, with your classmates will bring those opportunities. And then you have to decide, what is it worth to you, right? I left that job or rather the job afterwards, I decided I wasn't going to pursue another industry job and come to UCI at a salary that was literally half of what I had in industry. But I decided that I actually wanted to work in academia for a while, give that a shot. I wasn't thinking I was going to stay here all the time. And here I am 18 years later. So you have to find satisfaction in your work as well. So sometimes it's the money. You may be the supporter for your family, your spouse. Sometimes your spouse can support you and you can be more entrepreneurial. I know colleagues who went down the entrepreneurial route and were without salary for a few years as they launched their company, and their spouse supported them. And then ultimately they were successful and returned that investment multifold, right? When their company was sold or things like that. So those are all things that you have to balance in terms of lifestyle, in terms of interest, but you also need to expose yourself and connect with colleagues and so on, and keep in touch with your colleagues, because your colleague today that you know in passing in a class tomorrow may be somebody you want to hire for your startup or somebody that wants to hire you for their startup. So and in case you don't know, most companies give bonuses to their employees if they lead them to a successful hire. So keep that in mind as well. There's an interest why they would want to connect with you because they will get, I know this was even years ago, a couple $1,000 bonus for referral that leads to a successful hire. So why not connect to a successful hire, rather pay an employee, for that as opposed to a headhunter or so on. Yeah.
I would also jump in that I think one of the worst things I ever did in my own career was to sabotage myself through a lack of confidence, right? And sending out a resume, sending out a CV, and applying for a job, it is a low risk event, right? If you are not appropriate for the job, they're just going to set your resume aside. They're not going to hold on to your name and think bad thoughts about you for applying. So go for it. You don't know how some of the job listings are going to be very specific. And yet you don't know how married they are to that listing, right? They may have a much broader interpretation of it. So if you think that there's anything that fits within that, go ahead and apply. Also, I served on as an equity advisor for a number of years. And one of the big changes that's happening now is that we are changing the way we think of excellence. That is totally shifting, right? Excellence is no longer defined by, having an Ivy League degree and having X amount of jobs here and X amount of jobs there. Instead, it's a broader interpretation of what humanity are you bringing to the job as well. What differences are you bringing to the job that others may not have? And so don't think of yourself just in the terms of degree and dissertation and jobs and papers, but who are you in a larger sense? And how is that different from your competitors? And what can you bring to the field that others may not? Thank you.
So thank you so much, Jamie, for bringing up the apply lots of places and that it is actually low risk. I know it feels terrible and scary, but I always think back to my mother, who is totally shameless. And if you all ever get the chance to meet her, she's a delight. But she always says, if you don't ask, you know what the answer is. And that is the same thing with asking for a grant, with asking for startup funds for your new idea, with asking for a job. You got to ask and try not to take a lack of answer or the answer being no as anything other than imagine you never asked and you could just sort of move on. I applied for somewhere on the order of about 60 jobs when I first graduated with my PhD. And I don't say that to scare people, but I say that because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I was applying to industry and consulting firms and UCI, and that's okay. You can put things out into the world, and please do. So I really encourage you to do that. We've got just a few minutes left, so I want to really encourage our panelists. Any closing thoughts that anyone has to share with folks, please, this is your moment to please go ahead and share those and maybe give a little wave and then pull yourself off mute just so you give a heads up to others. Go ahead, Gordon.
So to add to the applying to lots of different opportunities, make sure you are also applying with some thought, meaning make sure you're not just sending the resume without a cover letter, with some kind of thought to understanding what the position is and explaining, exactly how your skills match that, right? So the worst thing that is just a blind resume with no matching of anything over there. I do encourage broad applications, just be thoughtful and take some time to be dedicated in that. And again, if you can find an alum at that company that you can reach out to and say, I saw this position, do you know anything about it? Can you tell me anything? They may not directly know, but they can give you some insight that can be in your cover letter that can and make your application better. And then when you do get to that interview and so on, make sure you have those basic questions, right? That you're going to be ready to answer. Like, what are your greatest skills? What are things that you had to overcome when you had a hardship, and how did you overcome a hardship, and so on? Those are standard questions that will come up in an interview, and you need to be ready on them. And then also be prepared to ask them questions, know the company or the university that you're applying to, what are their strengths, and then be ready to ask them questions as well.
If I could say just two things. One of them is if you have anything that looks bad on your record, poor grades, poor this, poor that, or even if it's not on your record, but you know about it, turn it around into a strength. There are ways to do that. You can always point to what you learned from those kind of things and how you become a stronger person as a result. The other thing is more motivational, on the comments of one of my other panelists about just asking. When I launched my startup company, it was a medical technology company. We reached out blindly to 5 former surgeon generals and said, would you be on our board of advisors? And every one of them said yes. I went to lunch with a guy, we had some sushi in DC, and he says, what are you working on? I said, well, this project. And he goes, well, how much money do you need to get to the next step? I said, about $3.5 million. And he goes, okay. And I got $3.5 million in like 20 minutes of sushi. So always ask.
I'm going to sushi with you next time. Anybody else coming with me?
So always ask, and just believe in yourself. Have the confidence to go and do that.
Go ahead, Kaylee.
I kind of want to return to the question about what steps you should be taking or what you're thinking about in your career. And I just kind of want to be very clear. a lot of graduate students have a really hard time figuring out how their family fits into their career. So I first just wanted to validate that. That can be really difficult. The two-body problem, I lived in the US while my husband lived in Korea for 2.5 years. These are really common experiences. You can overcome them. My husband now works in the same city. We live in the same house. It's amazing. But this is the same thing with like kids or even like your extended family. These are really important priorities, and there's no reason to compromise those. If you end up in a job that doesn't allow you to see your family enough or be near your family, you're not going to be very happy anyway. So I just encourage you to think about like, how is your life going to fit into your job, as opposed to there's a time and place to think about how is this job going to fit into my life, but one can't dominate the other. And then just generally, because I'm very sympathetic to the two-body problem, if you're ever having issues with that, please feel free to come talk to me about it.
Thank you, Kaylee. One of my favorite things is we sometimes say we have two-body opportunities instead of two-body problems around here, because we love to do partner hires, but that struggle can be really intense. So please do reach out to Kaylee. And I think Beth had something to add as well.
Yeah, I just want to sort of put myself out there. Kaylee offered to talk with people. If people want to reach out to me, I'd love to meet with graduate students occasionally. All these issues that everyone's talking about, they're very real. And frankly, they don't go away. They change and evolve in all sorts of ways over the time of your career and learning how to navigate them. But again, I go back to building a community and building a network and really thinking about who do you need to have around you to support you in the different ways, and taking agency in building that. And so I offer myself up as someone who would be happy to talk with you all and to help think through some of these complicated issues. And I just want to reinforce, you all, UCI students develop a really amazing, broad, rich set of skills. You have a lot to contribute, and figuring out how to put that out there in the world is maybe what you need some support on. And you've got a group of people here to help you. So best of luck to all of you.
Thank you, everyone. And I think we've got Lauren's got some closing comments as well.
Yeah, thank you. I think I just want to offer a different perspective as well for those who are in the audience that might be needing to transition quickly and might not have had an opportunity to do a lot of that self-exploration or networking or things like that. And I get questions quite a bit of, I need to leave my program within the next month, and how can I find a job? And really, I want to just put the focus on the priority there should really be about, finding income security for food, shelter, medical insurance, those types of things, and not to put too much stress and pressure on finding that first perfect job, right? And that as long as you're intentional about where you take that next step, even if it's a barista job, you're having that income security, and you can develop all sorts of skills, teamwork, communication, great networking happens at Starbucks. You can engage in that as well. So as long as you're being intentional and just continually moving forward, don't put too much pressure on that first job. And we do have a ton of resources as far as even just like an AI to review your resume. If you need a quick resume review, there's interview resources, just a ton at your disposal that you have access to as a UCI student. So please take advantage of those. And if you're in a situation like that, or even if you're a first-year PhD and you have 6 years to go and you want to talk about things, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help anywhere within that process. But thank you so much for having me as part of the panel.
Thank you so much. Jamie, do you want to say one more thing before we close out?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly add to what Lauren was saying. I always tell my students that it's about momentum versus direction, right? As long as you have momentum and you continue to move forward, you can always change direction later, but it is hard to get yourself moving from a standstill. So, whatever you have to do to create stability and to keep moving is what's important.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, this was a wonderful panel, and for me, a great way to end an otherwise stressful week, because I feel inspired and motivated and optimistic about all of the wonderful things our students are going to do. I do want to honor one comment that went into the chat that we answered offline about just sort of how much time does this all take, and it can feel stressful and overwhelming. And mostly what I'll say to you is read the response Jamie gave, which was a very nice one, but also it's bursty. You're going to have moments when you're quite intensively doing these things, and others when you can leave it to the background a little bit. So try to roll with those bursts as best you can. And I know that can feel overwhelming because you're often trying to finalize your MFA project or write your dissertation or do whatever that last thing is. And maybe you're TAing and you've got childcare and you've got X, Y, and Z other things. It can feel really overwhelming. So give yourselves the space to breathe. You are here, you got into these programs in the first place, which means you are really smart. You are finishing these programs, which means you are really hardworking and patient, and you are gonna go do great things. So breathe. We are all here for you. Please take advantage of all of these wonderful panelists who have offered of their time. I learned something from every single one of them when I talk to them, so I encourage all of you to reach out. And of course, as usual, come to my office hours if you would like. We will have another town hall in February. We have not picked the topic yet, so this is my quick advertisement that if you have topics you'd like covered, email me and we'll see if we can get a panel together for you. So thank you again to everyone. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend and good luck with all of this work ahead of you.